Welcome back, Sleepyheads, to another episode of Sleepy Aliens Perspective. I am your host, Leigh. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks for being here. This is going to be part 3 of our deep dive. I know it looks like I don't know what I'm doing, but I'm just doing a lot. And, there's just a lot happening at once. And I think I'm doing a really good job at managing all of those things. But nothing is going to be, perfect. This channel is going to have a come-up journey, and it's going to be a beautiful journey. But it will be a come-up journey, and I'm okay with that. I'm really okay with that. I'm not ashamed. But yeah, we're gonna be continuing our deep dive, and if you are just tuning in and haven't watched any of the previous episodes, sensitive content alert. We're going to be talking about heavy topic material, maybe triggering, so that's just a warning for that. I do switch words around to protect myself and the YouTube algorithm. So instead of saying more intense words, I will be just saying child offender and child offense. So those are my heads up. But let's dive right back into it. So where we left off, we were discussing the atrocities that Richard Windman overcame and who his offenders were, and the fact that this earth angel survived something and is doing something beautiful with his story. But I think I also want to touch on the fact that the kinds of people that commit these crimes in communities are often those people who do the most to maintain an image within a community. Because if you think about the really kind people, like the people who do those deeds and the people you tend to know in your towns who are just supportive and resourceful, just like that person that everybody knows and loves. There's usually people that are very low key, they don't need a lot of attention, And so this is when I talk about that energetic dichotomy that you experience. Man, okay, so before we get any further, I have had some, the sound disturbances that I have when I'm recording, it has been happening when I talk about heavier subject material, so I've been having some weird things, and I've just been saging before I record these things, and I told you guys that I'm tapped in, I train my brain to enhance my intuition and my psychic abilities, essentially, fucking shit, I I want to be my best self, and I want to empower my mind and know that I can overcome anything, knowing that I do believe that I can overcome anything, but just empowering my mind with that ability in terms of different areas in my life, that is a superpower, but yeah, so I thought I saw something moving, but yeah, we're just gonna keep rolling with it, because regardless, I am protected, so we're good. But yeah, so I think the people who work really hard to put on that front are the people who are doing the most dirty stuff, and it goes beyond them just having a big charity or whatever good thing they do publicly, think about the fact that they have to basically lie every single day of their lives to everyone they know, and they have this secret life that requires so much to maintain, and they do these really awful things, and they engage in some of the most criminal behavior that, if the public truly knew, society would fall where it stood, that's how deep some of this stuff goes. But it just makes you think about these people, and fuck, I would hate to live that kind of life. I would hate to be doing that kind of shit. I would hate to be putting out that kind of energy. I would hate to have to worry about that many things at once, you know? That's what I think about when I watch crime movies and crime TV shows. Like, I've been, like, finally watching Snowfall, and I think I'm on season 4 right now, and I'm gonna get into that because, man, I definitely, like, have cried a few times because I have some things in common with Franklin, but yeah, we'll talk about that. As well as a deep dive that I want to do in this new season of Atlanta, because I don't really know exactly what's happening, but Donald Glover is just really hitting on some major topics about some taboo things in the industry, and especially the hip-hop industry. So it's been a really, like, kind of an eerie season, but only eerie in the sense where you're like, those writers are really, like, him and those writers are good at alluding you to, like, you really don't know what will build, but, like, you're only worried about what's going to happen verbally, because they put you in these really weird, awkward, like, social moments that you witness on the show, and you're just like, I don't know. See, I'm getting off I'm getting off topic, but we're going to talk more about that, but it's been a good season. Oh man, it's good that I caught myself. But yeah, these politicians and these community members, these elite community members who engage in this stuff, it blows my mind. Like, no wonder, you know, like, some people have to still can't stop eating McDonald's and, like, need to drink a bunch and, like, have to go golfing a lot, you know? It's very interesting. It's very interesting, you know? Just think about, like, the outlets that they need to, like, express the emotions that come with this alternate life that they're living. It really pulls their consciousness into multiple directions. I mean, it's one thing to have different roles and to wear different masks, but I think when I think about this case, it just feels like, they're stretching their lifespan in like the most unnecessary way. Like, they're just not living an energetic peace at all. Like, it's very interesting. So this case is an example of organizations and institutions fronting the image of having good intentions, but protecting illegal systems and offenders, you know? So think about, like, the Catholic Church, the Church of Scientology, I mean, you know, like, it could be any church really at this point. We can also think about the Epstein case, Ghislaine Maxwell. Like, Ghislaine Maxwell, we don't even hear about that anymore. And considering, like, the information that woman must know, it does say a lot about when information is suppressed and how there's just so much information out there. We can't energetically hold the same emotion for every major event that's taking place in our society. So it's understandable that people, you know, forget and, you know, we move on, and 2 years later, like, something comes out and everybody's like, oh my God, yeah, I remember that case. And maybe you rewatch a documentary a couple of times because there's, like, what, 10 fucking documentaries about those cases. But yes, I mean, just to think about that. So these people are protecting not only their public image, but their finances and their social stakeholders, you know, within these communities. And like I said, that's a lot for a single consciousness to keep up. So it's not surprising that they have weird sexual addictions and fetishes. And I don't want to say that every fetish is weird, but sometimes they are really just out there and you just didn't see it coming. But, you know, I'm trying to be more understanding of some of those things when they're done in a legal and healthy setting, and when it is legal. You know, I'm not talking about pertaining to children, but I'm saying, like, if they wanted to find, like, some adult female prostitute who specialized in, like, throwing Furbies on a man while he's like chained up and listening to like a song that he remembered hearing on repeat when he was 4 years old, and he like resents his mom for it still. Again, I took that there, but yeah, it just, you have to think about those things. And also another thing to note, what does all of this promote in our society? Instead of peace and like informative like minds, it just promotes chaos over truth. And a lot is being left out, and we've gotten so used to like bullshit. Maybe that's why so many people take bullshit in their relationships, because hey, our God, like our institutions can feed us a lot of bullshit. There's a lot of good our institutions do, and they're necessary for their own reasons, but a lot of bullshit, a lot of energy draining. I mean, to me, the whole system is nothing but an energy vacuum, and you really have to be careful how you engage with those systems and what you do that can, pull you into certain institutions, of course. But yeah, that's just something to think about. Chaos over truth. Yeah. So in the state of Oregon, dozens of lawsuits have been filed against the Boy Scouts of America and its Oregon chapters for child offenses and suppressing information, systematic cover-up. In 2022, an Oregon man who was victimized in his childhood through the Boy Scouts of America, he won a $19 million case against the organization, and he basically bankrupted Boy Scouts of America, which is, and that is like, and that is like, that's justice. That's really awesome. That's just so cool. And I didn't even know that, like, when I was doing the research, I didn't even know that it would tie back to Oregon, or part one of this deep dive. But it did. And that's how, like, I was like, fuck yeah, I was meant to do this. I was meant to do this story. But yeah, let's get back into Tom Philpott and the other aspects. I'm just gonna have a sip of tea. The other aspects of his 1981 documentary, Boys for Sale. So Tom also investigated and interviewed male teenage prostitutes throughout Dallas, Austin, Houston, and the New Orleans area. Philpott focused more on the male teenage prostitutes because he did find, like, he did come across female teenage prostitutes, but he said there were just way more male ones, and it just shocked him. And so I think he just wanted to go in from that angle. So Philpott describes Houston as the worst city for homeless boys. He found 31 cases of boys suspiciously dying but not being deemed a homicide. Philpott stated that elite offenders preferred victims to be poor and white. In other words, vulnerable, desperate. But again, we go back to that key characteristic that these offenders like, and that is poverty. So financial vulnerability is a huge lure point for these traffickers. Now, I said I was going to keep it PG-13 conspiracy level in the first part of this video series. But so if you think about the powers that be, and you think about all the wealth that exists in the world essentially, and then you think about all those people that are starving or really poor, or who are just like suffering because they're poor, in some kind of way. If you were the powers that be, wouldn't you want to make sure that there's always some poor people, especially if you need to maintain a criminal organization that is worth $150 billion? So just interesting. Just something else interesting. But yeah, so Philpott is an early hero in the fight against child trafficking. But like MLK, Malcolm, multi-decade activists who have sat in prison and countless soldiers. Good heroes don't last long in America. So in 1982, a year after the release of the Boys for Sale documentary, two men break into Philpott's home. They shoot at him twice with his own gun. They used Philpott's own gun that they had found, and they shot at him twice, but they missed. Philpott survived. So he has stated in an interview with the Texas Monthly that the attack on his life did not surprise him. He knew that because of his research and documentary, he made mortal enemies. He said mortal enemies. And this is a sad part. So, 10 years later, on October 9th, 1991, Tom Philpott died from a gunshot wound to the head. His death was ruled as a self-infliction. There's very little info out there surrounding his death, and I think, of course, that's the way it was meant to be. Of course, you can't really find a lot of news reports from that time. I'd probably have to go to Texas, risk my life, trying to dip into some archive in the library, I think that's what I'd have to do. But, gosh, it's just, it's sad. It's sad, and it's sad that this happens to heroes that only want to bring peace and inform, and I think it says a lot energetically about what this planet really is going through. And I don't want to get too spiritual about it, but, I don't want to get into that yet. But it's energetic warfare. Yeah. Well, I will talk about what I was just thinking about, but I want to save that for another part of this episode. But yeah, so I would personally like to express my gratitude to Tom Philpott. May your spirit rest in peace. I think, your work speaks for itself, and you made a great impact, and you've done a lot to help give voices to people who society did not. Had he not interviewed those teenage male prostitutes, would we know that Houston had such a huge problem with those teenage prostitutes and suspicious deaths and it's just, would we have known about that? Probably not. So Tom Philpott's work was essential, it was important, and so thank you, Tom Philpott. And what a cool last name, Philpott. I love that. This case also highlights the pattern of the American pattern of information being suppressed, about higher level officials, within these cases. The names that probably exist, but you just never hear about from these cases, and they're left out of investigations, So, it makes you think that these offenders, at the end of the day, they reap the most and they take the most at the same time, from people and energy, can you imagine, what the world would be like without the stress of, political warfare? I think that's always gonna be a thing. It's just the energetic balance. It's how it manifests in the third dimension, First it starts out as a sense of consciousness, and then it's an emotion, and then from that emotion it falls through, and it projects, and it manifests physically into a situation or an event. I don't know, that's kind of how I see it. But this concludes part 3 of our deep dive. I just want to say, again, sage before you go to bed. I don't know if I said that the last time, but sage before you go to bed. And this is our deep dive of sex trafficking, information suppression, and communities. I think this has been I hope this has been insightful. I think it's been insightful for me. I've learned a lot of things. I'm going to burp. Excuse me. But part 4 of this deep dive will involve Belgium, the White March, and Marc Dutroux. So yeah, tune in. That will be coming up very soon. Thanks for supporting me. Like, share, subscribe. I try to make it feel less devious that time, but you just can't avoid it. It feels like a spell. Have a good night, sleepyheads. I'll see you next time. Bye.